Mini episode 1370 of the FDH Lounge is brought to you by Sportsology, delivering unconventional columns and webcasts about sports, TV, music, movies, and more. Follow them on the web at sportsology.com.
The FDH Lounge. You'll want to schedule your life around it.
A long time ago, on a gloomy, wet Cleveland spring night, two men stand alone amidst the late-night drizzle. Their voices echo across the vacant station parking lot as they debate the merits of the great American radio show that have been missing for far too long. On that night, an idea was born. That idea became the FDH Lounge. Welcome to the FDH Lounge.
Hello everyone, welcome to the FDH Lounge. This is FDH Managing Partner Rick Morris here. Original FDH Lounge Dignitary, that is, along with a fellow original, Chris Galloway. And we are breaking down the NFL division by division we're going through here. And this segment is on the NFC North in 2021. And as we're going through and taking a look, each division, we're limiting it just to the teams in that division, with the exception of in the AFC East, the first part of our series. If you want to hear our overall thoughts on the season, if you're catching this mini episode in isolation and you want our overall thoughts for the year, go back to the first one when we did on the AFC East. That takes up probably about the first half of the podcast there. For each team going through here, the baseline that I'm laying down comes from Fantasy Football Draftology 2021, available on the main page at fantasydrafthelp.com and the FDHlounge.com, our fantasy football and non-fantasy guide for this season. And I have a feature in there, one run-on sentence for each team. And so here are my four run-on sentences in the NFC North, and then we'll talk about the specific teams. And this is the predicted order of finish that I have for them. Of course, the first one is Green Bay, now that they have Aaron Rodgers back. For Green Bay, I have, with dilapidated offensive and defensive lines, to say nothing of thinness at wide receiver and linebacker, the degree to which this franchise is propped up by Aaron Rodgers should become clear even to the clueless and unappreciative management by season's end. Minnesota, the defensive talent ain't what it used to be, and the offensive line is deteriorating, leaving the offensive skill positions to try to carry the Vikes to the playoffs. Chicago, a team that hasn't had enough wide receiving talent seemingly all the way back to the days of George Halas now has more holes than usual defensively, presenting major problems for whoever lines up under center. Detroit, a toxic waste dump on defense and a pathetic wide receiving core will doom new quarterback Jared Goff even before he gets started. So those are my thoughts there, Chris, and I'm sure yours, from what I know of your thoughts on this, don't differ much from mine.
You have, and I have the same order in the NFC North.
Okay.
Green Bay, Minnesota, Chicago, Detroit.
All right.
Exactly the same order.
Kind of a chalk order.
I have Green Bay. Listen, and I've said it for years, Aaron Rodgers has been the ultimate Band-Aid on that roster his entire career. You know, I have famously said for years, when you looked at that roster, I didn't think there was a lot of difference between that roster and the Cleveland Browns other than Aaron Rodgers.
Sure. And
actually, a few years ago, that was proven out when the year Aaron got hurt and the Green Bay came to Cleveland and Deshaun Kaiser was starting for the Browns, and those two teams battled to the end with Green Bay narrowly winning.
The 0-16 Browns, if you need them.
Yeah, well, and Green Bay winning, I mean, like what, by 3? I mean, it was so close.
Right.
And it looked like the Browns actually were going to win that game, but then they did, they collapsed.
Yep.
That absolutely proved my point, that without Aaron Rodgers, Green Bay, that roster has always been basically the Cleveland Browns.
Right.
Now, and I say that pre-last year, this year, Cleveland Browns.
Right.
So, and I think again this year, Aaron Rodgers, to what you outlined in your run-on sentence, he does it again.
Yep.
They're going to be. I have them as the number 1 seed.
Wow.
They're going to win the division. They're going to win, 13 games, and they are going to be the number 1 seed in the NFC with a roster that without Aaron Rodgers would be lucky to win 6 or 7 games at best. So That's how I see it playing out. Minnesota, to what you've said, I actually think Minnesota's upgraded their defense some this year.
Okay.
They drafted a couple O-linemen early and late. So they're trying to address some of those issues. They've got Dalvin Cook. They can run the football. Cousins can sling it. I see them rebounding a little bit over what they did last year, but not enough to overtake the Packers. And I have them coming up just shy of actually making the playoffs, probably on a tie break.
Okay.
To Seattle. So Chicago, I also have them in third. It's going to be Andy Dalton for the first 4 or 5, 6 weeks. I'm telling you. I know Chicago fans are like, give us Fields, But if you look at Andy Dalton's season last year, and you take out the fact that he had a concussion and then COVID and had new offense and a new team, and oh dear God, his head coach was Mike McCarthy. You break all that out, and you look at his last 7 games of the year. Dallas went 4-3 with him.
Right.
He had a 67% completion rate. He was not bad, man. He was like 12 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. He had a good QB rating around 95. I mean, he was solid once he got over the early season injury and COVID and then the Mike McCarthy limitations.
Right.
He wasn't bad, and I think that's why he's going to start. Is Justin Fields the future for them? Obviously. But you're Matt Nagy right now. You need a quarterback who's, can win right now. And I don't think Justin Fields is that guy. I think, it's probably going to be Andy Dalton until at least till they're bye.
Mm-hmm.
And see how they do. To your point, though, they've got some problems on defense. As great as he is, Khalil Mack is still not, he's not carrying that unit the way I think some of the hype makes people think he is.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have them sort of, that the old sort of 8-8 type of, I know we can't do 8-8 anymore, right? It sucks that we can't have the 500. So I'm going to say the Bears go 8-1.
That's how you do it. That's how you get there.
And then Detroit, that roster. Ugh.
Yeah.
I feel bad for Campbell. I liked him as a coach.
I know.
I was a Dan Campbell fan. I wanted, I wanted the Browns to interview him and to take a hard look at him.
Mr. Smedium T-shirt.
I think that he was a guy that might have instilled some discipline when the Browns were a dumpster fire.
Right.
That never happened, whatever.
Right.
We moved on. But I think for a team, Detroit, I think Campbell's the right guy at the right time for that team. They don't have a lot of talent. They're not going to be good. They're going to have a lot of long weeks.
Right.
Of trudging through a dreadful season.
Right.
And I think you need a sort of a tough, strong guy like that to sort of, get those men to be men.
Mm-hmm.
And, is he going to end up working long term? Probably not. I mean, of course, in football anymore, does anybody work long term?
Right.
That's so rare anymore.
Right.
But I think right now, he's the right guy to put in charge of that dumpster fire and let him try.
Sure.
And, again, they just don't have talent. They just don't have depth. And they're going to lose a lot of football games this year. And they're going to be in that competition to have the number 1, number 2 pick in the draft next year. And I think I mentioned to you off the air a few months ago, I already could see Sam Howell ending up in Detroit. Because they're going to need a quarterback, because I think Jared Goff after this year and the beating he's about to take is going to be a broken man.
I agree. They're going to ruin him.
It's already done, dude.
Yeah.
And I'm saying this to you, the Goff fan.
Yeah.
He's listen, say goodbye, say your goodbyes. He's already dead.
Yeah.
He's a walking dead. He just doesn't even know it.
Yeah, I am a Jared Goff truther, a Jared Goff dead ender, and even I have to admit what's in for him. But I will say this, though, in terms of talking about any of our personal favorites here, you can't be having a real good feeling about Matt Campbell, and I'll tell you why. This has a little bit of a ring. I'm fond of weird analogies, and here I go again. This has a little bit of a ring of Mike Hargrove to it, of the jobs that he took later in his career, of like when you get into a situation that's not a good situation, but has not yet hit rock bottom, you're generally not the guy that's there when they get it turned around. You might want to be the guy that comes in 2 years from now. But to think that now, again, if they get the quarterback they're looking for next year and they can miraculously start taking steps forward, I could see that working out. But you got to admit, the timing of this thing here, the trajectory of it, you can't like his odds because it is going to get worse before it gets better. And few coaches, when that happens, are around when it gets better.
No, I agree. I mean, Dan Campbell took the job because he wasn't getting a lot of opportunities.
Right.
You know, he took that interim gig that season, what was that, 7 years ago with the Dolphins?
Right, something like that.
When he took over mid-year, and that was a lousy team, and, you know, I don't know, he had them competitive and tough, dude.
Right.
I watched that, and I was impressed. He just wasn't getting a lot of calls. So I understand why you're him and you say, you know the odds are stacked against you.
Right.
But you've got to take those opportunities when they're there. There's 32 jobs.
I agree.
And so he went for it, and it is an uphill climb for him.
Yeah.
To your point, I hope Detroit gives him, the 5 years that they draft, a Sam Howell or somebody next year. They give him an opportunity because they have to know that they are setting him up with just to fail to the tune of, at best 4 wins, probably three or 2 wins, and that's it.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know what Vegas has the over-under on, but it's got to be around 3.5. So, I think that they've got to have some patience with him. And what are they looking for in Detroit, right? I mean, if you're ownership, is that team playing hard despite not having enough talent?
Right.
Is the coaching staff organized, meaning they're not losing games because of failures of coaching?
Right.
They're only losing games because they don't have depth or talent at key positions. That you can deal with. What you don't ever want is what the Browns had with Hugh Jackson, where you're losing games because of coaching incompetence.
Right.
And you could see it. A team that went 0-16. You and I have frequently talked about that team should have won at least 5 or 6 games.
Sure.
There was enough talent on that team that they should have gone 6-10.
Sure.
But instead they went 0-16. And that was a function of incompetent coaching.
Yes.
So that's, if you're ownership in Detroit, that's what you want to see. You want to see well-organized, motivated team despite the losses, and coaches making the right decisions despite the lack of talent. And then you're going to feel good about it going into the offseason saying, okay, we've got another bite at the apple. We'll get another quarterback. We'll get some more depth, and we'll keep building this the right way. That's the only way forward.
Yeah, and that's the only rational way to look at it with as big of a sinkhole as that franchise is in right now. I actually have them set for 4 wins, 4-13. I have the Bears at 7-10, Minnesota at 8-9, so I'm a little bit more bearish on them than you are. And I'm definitely more bearish on Green Bay than you are. I only have Green Bay at 10-7. So keeping in mind that I got them going probably about 5-1 in that not so great division. I only really see them as about a 500 team outside the division. I think we're at a point this year where Aaron Rodgers being there, it's not going to be enough in a lot of these games here. I think it's getting harder and harder to camouflage what's around him. We maybe take it for granted based on what happened last year, but I look at the trenches. And not to go to the cliche about games are won and lost in the trenches because that's oversimplification. But they are really, not to put too fine a point on it, really not that good of a team in a lot of areas outside of Aaron Rodgers, and I see that catching up to him a little bit this year.
Well, they're not that good outside of Aaron Rodgers, but they have Aaron Rodgers. And I think that this is going to be the Aaron Rodgers revenge tour.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's going to be on a tear, and I think his teammates are going to play their asses off because they know that this is the end of it. This is their last chance to get to a Super Bowl with him. They know it.
Right.
They know he's gone after this year, and they're staring into the abyss. And I think that's going to be I don't disagree with anything you just said about that team on those two lines. But I think that the motivation of those players that if we don't get it done now, we may never have a chance at the Super Bowl in our careers because this guy's going to be in Denver next year.
Right.
And so we better damn well find a way to do whatever we got to do to excel and try to win a Super Bowl now. And I think Rodgers is going to come out and try to have, another MVP, best year of his, best career year of his entire life, just to stick it in the eye of management. You know how Rodgers is wired, right?
Yeah.
He wants to be all world this year and then to say to them, and fuck you on the way out the door.
I could see that.
And he wants them to know badly how much they screwed up and how much they're going to miss him. It's the classic, the girlfriend, breaks up with you and she goes and loses 20 pounds and,
right.
And she's got all the bikini pics on Instagram,
Right.
That's going to be Aaron Rodgers. He's going to want Green Bay to know how badly they screwed up.
Yeah.
And I think that's what this year is going to be. And that's why I have them as the number one seed, even though in so many ways it doesn't make sense. What you say makes sense, right?
Right.
But sometimes that's just not how it works. And I think that's going to be Green Bay this year. Now, I don't have them going to the Super Bowl. Spoiler alert.
Okay.
So, in typical LaFleur fashion, they're going to come up short.
Well, in looking at this here, and again, I go back to our first segment here. I'm not going to get into specifically what we said on the AFC East. You'll have to go listen. But in that segment, we were talking about the league as a whole. We referenced the concept of federalism. You have now referenced the whole notion of the revenge body as popularized in pop culture. So, I mean, for anybody that doubts the width and the breadth of this show, Chris Galloway, from federalism to the revenge body, we go everywhere, man.
Aaron Rodgers is going to be the hot chick that got away. Sorry, Green Bay. This is your last run, and then you're Jordan Love for a couple dismal years until you're back in the lottery trying to, at the top of the draft, trying to find the new quarterback.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And in looking at it here, I know, again, you're not picking Green Bay to go to the Super Bowl. I think it's highly unlikely that they would if they make the playoffs. Not impossible, but I'll say highly unlikely. Would you say highly unlikely or just unlikely?
I just think unlikely.
Okay.
I don't think they're getting there. I do have them as a number one seed, which sets them up to possibly be on their way to LA for the Super Bowl. And I have them getting to the NFC Championship game, and I have them losing at home.
All right, so somewhere between, if you're looking at us, somewhere between highly unlikely and unlikely, which I understand is the same odds of Donald Trump being able to get the Taliban to post something on Twitter for him. So that is the equivalent notion here of the Packers reaching the Super Bowl as we look at this. So next up, we are going to have the NFC South. So thank you, Chris Galloway. Thank you, everybody, for tuning into this mini episode of the FDH Lounge.